I am somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
Welcome to the Saturday Morning Community Freedom Forum. Each and every week we bring you information, we bring you inspiration, and we bring you the opportunity to become engaged in the movement for social justice and social change. I know you've been watching the polls, you've watched and you're waiting. It's almost election day. This is the Saturday before the election, and we want you to get involved, get engaged, make sure that you have, one, voted early. And you may still vote early in some states, particularly in Illinois. Check and see if you can vote early. If you have not voted and you can't vote early, election day is Tuesday. So you want to get ready to vote on Tuesday, which is election day. You need to plan voting, however. People are turning out in record numbers, so you want to vote early. You also want to make sure that you have clear in your mind who you're voting for. You got to start at the top of the ticket: president, vice president, U.S. Senate, U.S. House of Representatives. Then you go to state legislative offices. You're going to vote for some state senators, and some state house members are up for re-election. And when you leave the state offices, you then will be voting for county offices. The county offices include state's attorneys or district attorneys, as they're called in some places. And then you're going to go all the way down to judges, judicial candidates. Your state circuit court, county circuit court judges are running for election. And some of them in states like Illinois, they're running for retention. And so you're going to be voting that they should be retained in their seats, or some cases you voted for new judges. You want to be a part of this, a movement to change. What are you voting for? You're voting for criminal justice reform. You're voting for so many things, and you're going to hear about that on the broadcast. We're going to tell you what happens if you get to the polling place and you have some issues. We'll tell you the number is 1-866-OUR-VOTE. We want you to be prepared. We want you to be ready. This week at Push, you will hear a little bit about our food justice program. We've given out more than 500 boxes of groceries in Chicago alone. We're giving food to families and individuals in need in our satellite offices of Atlanta and San Francisco. And we're going to expand it as best we can to our 1,000 churches connected around the country. We want to make sure that everyone that needs food has access to it. Reverend Jackson has launched a diaper drive. There are so many mothers who can't afford diapers. They can't buy diapers with the money that's set aside for food stamps. Does not allow them to buy diapers. So we want to make sure that we change that policy. But in the meantime, we are collecting diapers every size so that young people, mothers, and parents will be able to change their children as necessary, so that they don't get certain rashes or diseases. If you want to be a part of the diaper drive at Push, just call us at Freedom, 773-FREEDOM, or you can go to rainbowpush.org and get more information. We want to make sure that we elect people this go around that will be changing the policy for mothers who are living on Medicaid, that they might be able to acquire not only food, but also diapers for the babies that they have. Reverend Jackson's column, you want to get that column. It's going to be online. It's on our website, rainbowpush.org. We need you to be a member. Membership matters. And so you can go to rainbowpush.org and join Push right now, or you can call us at 773-FREEDOM and become a active and involved and engaged supporting member of the Rainbow Push Coalition. Serving you is what we do. Pushing for you is what we do absolutely best. But remember, if you miss this broadcast, you can always go to the Push YouTube channel and get prior broadcasts. And you can get some of our information on our Facebook page, or you can always go to our webpage. We want you to get involved, get inspired, and get encouraged. Stay with us, join us. Don't turn that dial, stay with us. We got some more information for you.
In the stormy season of violent campaign rhetoric, we're called to be steady in the face of the whirlwind. There's a tug of war for America's soul. We have a clear choice. Take down walls of separation, build bridges of hope and unity. Love must trump ignorance and fear and hatred and violence.
Our vote is our voice. Let's march the polls together. Keep them alive. Let nothing break your spirit. Never surrender. Vote, 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 and keep hope alive.
Hey, everybody. It's Pastor Joseph Bryant Jr. I'm the Executive Director of the Silicon Valley Bay Area Office for the Rainbow Push Coalition. And I am just so grateful for the opportunity to partner with our phenomenal leader, Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. Allow me to share my sincere gratitude to all that have joined us for our annual Silicon Valley Push Tech 2020 conference. It was an amazing event, and I want to thank all of you for taking your time and being a part of our event a couple of weeks back. It was amazing, and I want to thank all of our sponsors that came through in such amazing ways and just blessed us and benefited us. Were able to help us to do what we needed to do to make a phenomenal event, as well as to our fantastic speakers. All of you were great. All of you were amazing. And for all of you that registered, of course, you're going to be getting your gifts, your special gifts for registering for the conference. You're going to receive your souvenir booklet. You're going to receive some clips from the conference and highlights from the conference. It was really something. Talking again about diversity and inclusion. Our votes matter. Our voices matter. Our vision matters, because actually Push Tech 2020 wasn't about the year 2020. It was about vision. Clear vision, perfect vision is 2020. And what we wanted to see was a better Silicon Valley, a better tech industry, more equity, more equality, more people of color, more inclusionary reality. And so Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson, in his phenomenal ways, again, opened doors of opportunity so we could have seats at the table, not just at the board level, C-suite level, executive level, but also for students and for community groups and for small businesses and minority businesses and for pipelines to HBCUs. Thank you, Reverend Jackson, for your vision. Thank you to Lyle Butch Wing for your 36 years of service, and we're standing on your shoulders doing this work. And thank all of you again for being a part of our conference. And then this past week, thank you for all of you that joined our town hall with our faith leaders. That was fantastic. We want to thank Facebook for partnering with us and for joining us at the hip with Penn America. What a great tandem we had, talking about what's really most important for all of us right now as we listen to Penn America talk about the importance of how the faith community learns, teaches itself, equips itself, and prepares itself for what? November 3rd, November 3rd. It's here, y'all. It's here, November 3rd. And I know we've been saying Black Lives Matter. Peep this, y'all. Black votes matter. That's what we need to be focusing on. All of you, my African-American brothers and sisters, yes, Black Lives Matter, even though we've been treated for 400 years and even in most recent days been treated as if we don't matter. Black lives do matter, but right now, I want you to focus on Black votes matter. Make sure everybody you know and love, everybody that's over 18 and registered, gets to the polls on Tuesday. Do whatever you can to help people get to the polls. Offer them a ride. Help them get there. We're providing shuttles for our seniors. We got church vans going throughout the cities here in the Bay Area. Anything we can do to make it happen. We're going to be going around some of the pastors, encouraging people, standing in line. We just want to make sure that we do our due diligence and we handle our business on the 3rd. We got to do what we got to do on the 3rd. I could talk about all the programs and all the activities and all the different services we're providing, but the most important thing on the agenda right now, brothers and sisters, is November 3rd. November 3rd. Take yourself to the polls, drive to the polls, get a ride to the polls, walk, taxi, do what you got to do. Be there November 3rd. If you haven't already cast your vote, if you haven't already mailed it in, make sure you represent on November 3rd. We want to make sure that our voice and our vote matters. We want to see the next 4 years better than the last 4 years. We want to see more opportunities. We want to see things turned around. We want to see everything we love and appreciate and have fought for. If it hasn't been lost, we want to keep it. And if it has been lost, we want to claim it back. So join us on November 3rd, wherever you are, all around the country. And for our international audience, please pray for us. Pray for us to do what we need to do on November 3rd as a nation, that we can live up to our creeds, live up to our beliefs, live up to who we say we are, and we make sure that we are all one nation under God, handling our business as an active, engaged community that says to the world, we know that we have a voice that matters, and we have the democracy model, which says when our voice and our votes go forward, things can change. Let's make it happen, y'all. Pray for peace, encourage people, do what you can. Most of all, November 3rd, Black votes matter. I'll see y'all November 3rd, Tuesday. We're going to make this thing happen. We're going to turn the world around. We're going to change things around, and we're going to see a better day. God bless you. Praying for you. Keep hope alive. See ya November 3rd.
Greetings, Rainbow Push Coalition. This is Pastor Tez Andrews from Connect Church and Connect Sports in Southeast Atlanta and Decatur. Thank you so much for your donations over the past few months. We've been able to feed almost 500 families because of the food box donations from the Rainbow Push Coalition. You have been such a blessing to our community during COVID-19. Many people in our community, especially in urban areas, have been hit the hardest during this time with layoffs, with intense poverty, and just needing the bare necessities of food. But yet we've been able to be a blessing because of your partnership with Connect Church, Southeast Atlanta, and Decatur. And for that, we say thank you. Thank you for helping us tell the community to keep hope alive in the midst of a pandemic. God bless you, and we certainly look forward to many more years of partnership in the community.
This morning, a historic moment for the 2020 election. At one of New York City's premier venues, long lines snaking around the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, while marching bands drum up excitement. This is the first time early voting has been allowed in New York in a presidential election. Many voters waiting hours outside arenas, museums, and precincts, determined to make their voices heard. This wave of enthusiasm sweeping across the city. In states reporting data, an unprecedented 57 million ballots have already been cast. That's more than 40% of the total votes counted in the 2016 general election. The news correspondents fanning out across the country to talk to voters.
I have family members that never cared about politics in their entire lives. They are voting.
For all of the 225,000 people who cannot vote today because of COVID, for the Breonna Taylors and the George Floyds of the world, I feel like it's really important that I do it and that I do it early.
I feel like we have the tools in place to prevent COVID, but we don't have the tools in place to prevent voter fraud.
I do care about things. I do care about how our country is progressing.
I think with the pandemic, we have no idea, if we would get sick and be able to vote on November 3rd.
Incredible turnout to see these lines. I've never seen this before in my life.
6 states, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia have had more than 1 million votes cast in person.
People are energized. They are fired up. They want to have a say in their government. They want to build a government that is reflective of their values and a government that is reflective of the people it seeks to serve.
At this early voting site at 43rd and Cottage Grove in Chicago's Bronzeville neighborhood, no lines this afternoon.
I got in, got my vote done, and left.
Most coming to vote in person, but some dropping off their mail-in ballots.
Did our research, filled out for the candidates, sealed it, and then came in here at this center. So we're in the 4th ward, wanted to make sure that we dropped it off in the ward they were located in.
80-year-old Helen Vallier never misses an election, citing her family history in Louisiana in 1868 as her motivation.
My ancestors and relatives were killed because of the right to vote.
This is her first time voting early.
I wanted to make sure I got my vote in.
Sydney McKissick wasn't old enough to participate in the last presidential election.
One of my main issues is police brutality. That's one. And then I go to a HBCU, so funding's for school, but more specifically for HBCUs.
Although the presidential election is getting most of the attention, voters are not overlooking the local races.
We just finished voting on judges, and the decisions that they make affect, juveniles. It affects us directly, if we ever get caught up in the court system or anything of that nature.
With just a little over a week to November 3rd, many say most of their family and friends have already voted.
I'm the last person of my family to vote. Yes, it's super important for all of us, I'd say.
I just wanted to briefly go over some legal considerations. We are facing 3 pandemics. COVID-19. The second pandemic is police brutality. Oh, that's a pandemic. And finally, I want to talk about election suppression. Oh my goodness. Election suppression is alive and well. And when we talk about election suppression, there are 2 ways to protect the right to vote if you're a lawyer. So we know that the RNC and the DNC, they dispatch lawyers as poll watchers to protect the right to vote, to ensure the integrity of the process. We know this is a factual matter. The RNC has said they're going to dispatch 50,000 poll workers. That's partisan. The DNC does it, the RNC does it. But there's a nonpartisan effort that the National Bar Association, Transformative Justice Coalition, Rainbow Push Coalition, Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights, ACLU, and other organizations, NAACP, embrace, and that's election protection. On March 2nd of 2020, Reverend Jackson and the late Congressman John Lewis in Congressman Lewis's office in Atlanta gave me my mandate and said, you must, in your year, make sure that Black lawyers protect the right to vote. And that's what we're doing. We have programs, we have a 50-state program that we're not talking about or doing intellectualizing about, that we are acting on in our communities. We've identified 20 of the worst states where election suppression is alive and well. We have lawyers, our young lawyers that are working in Florida, where the citizens of Florida voted to restore the rights of convicted felons once they've served their time. And then the legislature said, yeah, but you can do that, but you're gonna have to pay all your fines. The problem is in Florida, there's no centralized way of finding out what those fines are. So there's a group that the National Bar Association has joined. And thus far, they've raised over $5 million to pay all of those fines. They have done the data, they've done the research, and there are many celebrities, LeBron James and others, who are putting up the money for that. It's an extraordinary effort, but Black lawyers, National Bar Association lawyers are working hand in hand because there have to be lawyers to review the documentation to ensure that those persons will have their rights restored. That's just one example of the things that we're doing in the election protection space. So we are ready, we are willing, and we're able, and we're in action. My administration is one of action. I have made a call to action of every single African-American lawyer living in this country. And for those who are above, we're praying. We're praying and we're asking for their grace. Because right now, here and now, we are fighting 3 pandemics, and election suppression is extraordinary. And we don't have a moment to wait. We don't have a moment to talk about it. All we have a moment to do is to act. So I'm going to leave you all with 10 things. And by the way, Barbara Arnwine, who is the mother of the election protection movement, it is a movement, our Barbara Arnwine. When I say our, because she's a member of the National Bar Association. She's a part of Rainbow Push Coalition. She has transformative justice. She is the mother of the election protection movement for lawyers. She is our senior advisor and helped to design our policy last year, and it's being executed this year for the National Bar Association. Just want to make sure y'all are aware of that. So when we talk about the 10 pointers, I'm just going to go through them quickly for every single person, and that I have preached to our lawyers that we must do in our communities. They are as follows. 1, check your voting status. How do you do that? Go to vote.org, vote.org. Check your voting status. You may think you're registered to vote, but you may have been purged like the millions of other Americans because you didn't do something or somebody's saying you didn't do. Check your voting status. Number 2, verify the various voting options. There's some people who are going to vote in person no matter what. Why? They don't trust the mail. Why? Because the mail's not reliable. Why? Because we're having issues with the Postal Service. We know this, there's litigation. We are not Bobo the clown, we get it. But we must be able to vote safely. Early voting is critical because that's a safer way over a period of time. So for those who are comfortable, vote at your comfort level, but you must vote. Early voting, vote by mail if that's your comfort level. We know in our community that's not popular because when you vote by mail, it's got to be exact. You can't answer 5 out of 10 questions. You must answer all 10 questions. And by the way, in most jurisdictions, you must put a stamp. You can't just drop it. You got to put a stamp. You know how you just think, oh, I'll just drop it because it's a ballot. No, stamp. Just remember that. But every state is different. So you must know what the rules are in your state. The National Bar Association, through its 86 affiliate chapters and sections and divisions, has training in most critical states with election suppression. Have a voting plan. Well, what does that mean? Don't let somebody else tell you how to vote. Think of what you're going to do now. Don't wait till election day because it might be too late. Because on election day, if you want to check your status, it might very well be too late. You don't want to get a provisional ballot. Have a voting plan now. Go to your state election officials. You can do it online. Find out what's available. If you can get an absentee ballot, then, and if you can drop it off at a drop box, do that if that is what is safest for you. If you want to vote in person, I would encourage early voting. Or if you're going to vote on election day, have all that protective gear and be prepared to wait in line because we know that the turnout is going to be exceptional and extraordinary, as well as should be, protecting the right to vote. Number 4, reach out to the state election officials to find out the rules. If you have access to the internet, you can do that. If you don't, call the National Bar Association. We will do that. Call Rainbow Push Coalition, and they will tell you how to get to your election officials in your state. Spread the word in your communities about how to protect the right to vote, going to vote.org. Spread the word. Be purveyors of information, of truth. Register with the NBA Election Protection Effort if you are a lawyer. www.nationalbar.org. Reach out to Rainbow Push Coalition. Reverend Jackson has been registering and his organization's people to vote forever, for decades. We have the systems in place. On election day, if you're going to vote, you must have protective gear. This is not the time to try to be body beautiful. We must protect ourselves with a mask, with a plastic protective shield, with gloves. We must, if you take the gloves off, use hand sanitizer because you're touching equipment to vote. Be socially distanced. Bring water, bring snacks, because you might be in line for a very long time. And bring your lawn chair. Oh yeah, don't be concerned about optics and how you look. You must vote. And if it means that you have to sit for hours, bring your lawn chair, be hydrated. And the National Bar Association is raising money and has already raised a lot of money and has a movement afoot in these areas, these 20 states that we've identified, and we've broken it down to certain cities as well, where we are going to be part of that movement to provide protective gear to our community, because it is not an option not to vote. Number 7, register 5 people. 5 people, just take it upon yourself to be responsible for the registration of 5 people. Reach out and touch someone in your family and your circle, in your immediate circle. Number 8, arrange for transportation for someone who wishes to vote in person. Remember COVID. We know in Kentucky when they had shut down 97% of the precincts, and there was litigation around that, but people still voted in the primaries. Uber and Lyft did offer free rides. There are organizations and companies who believe in the right to vote. It's not partisan. They just want people to vote. Reach out to those organizations. Usually many of our grassroots organizations do that. If you got a car, make arrangements, but it must be done safely. Remember, we're in COVID. 9, recruit volunteer poll workers. We know that many of our poll workers historically have been senior citizens. It is not prudent and they will be counseled against being poll workers during COVID because they're senior citizens and many times have other medical ailments that would preclude them, and their doctors probably wouldn't allow them to do that. But there are other people who want to be poll workers. Recruit them. There are many things that we can do from our desk by making phone calls. And then finally, the last point is refuse to be denied. Refuse to be denied. If you get to your polling station and there's some type of raggediness, funkiness, and we know it when we see it, it's election suppression, call 1-866-OUR-VOTE. It's a hotline, 1-866-OUR-VOTE. Call Rainbow. I've done that. I did that when I was in Brookhaven last year voting for Stacey Abrams, all kinds of irregularities. I waited 5 hours in line this time to vote in the past primary. 5 hours, it should have taken 10 minutes. There was litigation surrounding all of that because sometimes you just got to escalate it up. Again, 1-866-OUR-VOTE, that's a hotline. We got lawyers ready in the field. We're not talking about it, we're acting. We only got time to talk. And we are also providing protective gear for our citizens, for our community to vote. Because after all, the one thing that lawyers know how to do, they know how to talk and they know how to get into court and to speak truth to power and to seek justice. And that's what the MBA lawyers, that is their mandate, and that's what we're doing. Thank you.
Good morning. We are in the midst of a major drive to get more members, more people engaged and involved in Rainbow Push, supporting the programs of Push for Excellence and the Citizenship Education Fund. If you're interested in public policy and you want to help change the policies that impact those incarcerated, change the policies that impact students attending colleges and universities, if you want to be a policymaker, then you need to join Rainbow Push and join by paying your $35 right now. Some of you watch us every week. You listen to us on the radio. You're viewing us in social media. We need you to become a member. It's only $35 a year. If you believe in the scholarships that we give to thousands of students each and every year, we've awarded more than $10 million to scholars year to date. What do you have to do to give and support Push? It's really very simple. You can go to rainbowpush.org if you're on a computer and press donate. Give any amount. Every dollar is important. You want to talk to somebody, call us at 773-256-2775. You can give right now, any denomination that you choose. You can text the word PUSH, P-U-S-H, to 41444. Text on your cell phone. Most of you have a cell phone. Just text PUSH, P-U-S-H, to 41444, and you can give any amount that you feel comfortable giving. Or call us 773-256-2775, or go to rainbowpush.org and just press donate. Wherever you are, you can support us as we keep pushing for you.
We are ready to raise our voices at the ballot box. The need for law enforcement reform, along with addressing the myriad issues that are plaguing communities across the nation, cannot be underestimated. We demand justice for Breonna Taylor, for Jacob Blake, for Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Rayshard Brooks, and so many others that we remember on today. But we also must demand justice for healthcare, housing, education, jobs, community development, criminal justice and law enforcement reform, voting rights, and fair representation. Everybody needs to register to vote, get educated about the voting process, and cast a ballot during this election cycle. Whether you vote by mail or in person, early voting or on election day, there's too much at stake to sit this election out. Here's what you can do. Go to BeCountedRPC.com BECOUNTEDRPC.com. There, you can verify your voter registration. You can register to vote, get information about the mail-in voting in your state, and get information about all of our voter initiatives in partnership with the Transformative Justice Coalition. We will continue to fight for what is right. Remember, BeCountedRPC.com. Go there right now, register to vote, and always remember to keep hope alive.
For you, what are the important issues going into this election?
The disposition toward human rights by President Trump is a real issue. He is the overwhelming issue in the campaign, his behavior. But our ability to do something about it, that's the hope. The hope lies that we have the ability to do something about it.
In terms of this year especially, we've really once again seen the issue of police brutality. How will that as an issue play out, do you feel, in this election?
Well, this is a global issue, not just a local issue. I'm convinced that. The cameras have been a big factor in the new disposition. We would not have known. We saw George Floyd die on camera in almost in real time. 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Let me breathe. Let me breathe. It touched something deep in humanity. That's why you had so many whites protesting. It was humiliating for blacks, embarrassing for whites, and bad for America altogether.
One element that has occurred over the last few years has obviously been the growth of Black Lives Matter as a movement. How do you assess what they have achieved over the last few years or so?
Black Lives Matter is not for blacks only. It's a side of history. We want to see the number of whites involved in saying no to police brutality, yes to voting count, yes to health care. Black Lives Matter has raised the conscience for everybody. It's the center of a moral-based coalition. I'm so proud of this generation, and I march with them every chance I get.
If Biden-Harris were to win, there has been a concern over whether there will be a peaceful transition of power. Is that a concern for you?
It is. He'll be totally unaccountable for 3 months. Totally unaccountable. That's too long for him to have that kind of power. And if he lost, he'll be bitter and burned. He could thrust into a war. I'm convinced that Trump wants on January 20th, I think he really wants some drama in January, where he knows he can't win it, but he'll turn his 90 million followers into a serious right-wing movement in this country.
One key element from this election, though, is Kamala Harris and her running as vice president. How do you assess her and what she could potentially bring to America?
She's qualified. She brings a lot to the table, and she's an able debater. She can argue her case. I said in a tweet the night that Dr. King and Randall Hamer and Mandela and the models of our time will be proud that she represents our interests now at a high place.
Obviously, there's a lot of concern, anxiety around right now. What is your vision for the future? Where do you feel America?
Forward by hope, not backwards by fear. By inclusion, not exclusion. We all matter. We're all God's children. Human rights has been the foundation for local, national, and international policy. I think that becomes our challenge today, to see the value of a solid foundation based on ethics and character and integrity and transparency.
Here's a look at what you need to know about your voter rights on Election Day. Please bear in mind that some laws vary from state to state, so be sure to look up the voter laws in your state. If the polls close while you're in line, stay in line. Election officials cannot end voting until everyone who is in line has voted. If you make a mistake on your ballot, ask for a new one. If the machines are down at your polling place, ask for a paper ballot. If you forget your ID and one is required, ask to sign an affidavit swearing to your identity or vote with a provisional ballot. This one depends on the state. If you vote with a provisional ballot, you may be required to return to an election office within a few days after the election and present your ID to have your ballot counted. It is a federal crime to intimidate, threaten, coerce, or interfere with the right of another person to vote as he or she may choose. If you experience voter intimidation, you can give a sworn affidavit to a poll worker that you meet the qualifications to vote. You should also report intimidation to your local election officials. Their offices will be open on Election Day.
We are heading towards the 2020 presidential election. How to ensure your vote counts.
Because of COVID-19 cases,
There's just a lot.
confusion is high.
How do I register to vote?
I think I'm already registered.
Can we vote by mail here?
Let me check.
Thank you. You'll be safe, right?
Yes.
Go out and vote. It's so important. Woo! It's the most important thing you can do.
Enough electoral votes, more than 270, more than enough to become the 44th President of the United States. He will be the first African-American President of the United States.
I've been broke all my life, but I kept hope all them nights. You see business in my city? Yeah, they closed all them twice. I was just riding down Salem, all them damn potholes I can't drive. I know y'all can fix it faster, but I know y'all won't try. Don't nobody care about us, and that's why I don't vote. Voted for Obama back in 2012. I remember that's when I had hope. He was saying, yes, we can. And everybody got less food stamps. And when I turned 21, I was still broke. I'd never vote again. I don't think I ever had a president make my life better. Did it all on my own. Ain't no politician ever do a nice gesture. I don't even know the mayor's name. I ain't never seen her one time ever. Tell me how she gonna help the city. What I'm supposed to do, write letters? What I'm supposed to do, blame Trump? He ain't never really gave a Ain't nobody raised minimum wage. None of these jobs pay enough. I think they just wanna keep us broke, cause they ain't putting none in place for us. This how all my people feel, but we gotta learn. We complained enough, let me change it up. Everything I just said, everybody I know think the same way. See, they don't wanna see us vote, and we never do, so we see the same thing. But all our votes really do count, and they'll never really let it show. So now I'm finna break it down, cause if I don't, you would probably never know. First thing first, you know back in middle school when they taught us, it was 3 branches of the government. We forgot it when we got older. It's the judicial, the legislative, and executive. But all we know is the executive. That's the mayor or the governor and the president. Now none of them 3 people make no laws, they just be checking them. The laws come to their desk and all they do is say no or yes to it. So when the news station tried to tell us that Barack Obama couldn't put us on, we was all salty at Obama when it was the Congress members all along. We gotta focus on the legislative branch, yeah, they the ones that make the laws. Yeah, they the ones write how much food stamp money you get on the card. But when people that wanted to help us wanted the job, I know they probably lost. Cause we ain't even know their name, we ain't know their face, we ain't know it all. So the Congress or the State House, that's legislative, they make laws. So what we want from the president is what they do, okay y'all? See, they election every 2 years, but we don't ever even go to those. The Congress, they can raise minimum wage, but we ain't even really know it though. So you know how back in 08, when we all voted for Obama, we was all supposed to go back in 2010 and vote for the Congress. Cause they the ones make child support laws, they the ones choose if your kids at school get to eat steak or corn dogs. The State House make the court costs. So if the country failed, then you can't say it's them, it's your fault. Cause y'all ain't know to vote for Congress members that was for y'all. And they don't gotta leave after 4 years, and we just let them sit. See, they don't wanna tell you this, they want you to focus on the president. Now the 3rd branch is the judicial, that's judges. They the reason why John Crawford and Trayvon ain't had justice. So when Meek Mill got locked up just for popping willies, we blame the judge and not the city when they let her get voted in, cause they ain't know who to vote against. Imagine life on the other side. Roads better, schools better, everybody get their license back. Grocery store food better, custody of your kids back. Homeless people get new shelters. If we gon' fix the U.S., we gotta start with them 2 letters, me and you. Somebody told us that the government wanna keep us broke, but the only reason why those people in the government is cause we ain't vote. And I ain't talking about the president, I'm talking about the ones we ain't know. See, they was gonna try to keep it low, but it's gonna hurt them when they see the polls.
Every time you stay home, someone is making a decision about you, making decisions about the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food your kids eat, and how much money you bring home every 2 weeks. So every time you sit out an election, every time you don't show up because you think it doesn't matter, someone else is happy that you didn't show up, so they can make that decision for you. Vote.
Hi, I'm Todd Yeary here outside Dr. King's workshop, the Rainbow Push headquarters, where people of goodwill from all walks and all places gather as comrades in the movement for justice and equality. Social justice movements have been birthed in the imaginations of people in places just like this. You can be a part of this justice movement too. Join Rainbow Push as we fight for justice in the 21st century. Go to rainbowpush.org or dial 773-FREEDOM and remember, keep hope alive.
We've heard a lot about voter suppression as we approach Election Day. So what is it, and how does it manifest itself? First, a little history. At the height of the Civil Rights Movement, when leaders such as the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and John Lewis marched against legalized black voter disenfranchisement, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed into law a landmark piece of legislation that prohibited racial discrimination in voting. This was called the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Despite the law, efforts to thwart voting for minorities has persisted ever since, and in some states, it has worsened because of a 2013 Supreme Court ruling that gutted a section of the law requiring states with a history of racially discriminatory voting rules to get federal approval before changing voter regulations. Today, this is called voter suppression. Voter suppression takes on many forms, from purging voter rolls and limits on early voting to intimidation at the polls and denying convicted felons the right to vote. Courts have struck down some of these rules when it was clear they were designed to disproportionately disenfranchise black and Hispanic voters. The Republican National Committee plans to recruit thousands of poll watchers for the upcoming election now that the GOP is no longer under a court order banning the practice. Democrats argue this is essentially voter intimidation. Another example is strict voter ID laws, such as in Texas. Minorities are much more likely than whites to lack accepted voter ID. Voting rights advocates also argue that President Donald Trump's efforts to scare voters from casting their ballots by mail is another form of voter suppression. The president denies the claim.
We've spent the past several months working for social justice reform and criminal justice reform, and this president made and gave no acknowledgement to the many families, most recently George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Jacob Blake. He finds it convenient to visit the states and cities where they live, but doesn't even take the time to call their name or mention their name. And so in spite of the relative calm, we know that calm does not indicate there's not a storm. And the winds of change and transformation are blowing all across our nation. The president failed furthermore in not even articulating his own so-called platinum plan. While he's been president for nearly 4 years, can't present a plan to us in the last 4 weeks of an election and expect us to take the bait. We're very clear on what this election is about. It's about poverty, it's about social justice, environmental justice, human rights, and gender equality. Black and brown communities have been adversely affected by COVID-19, while millions are infected and more than 200,000 are to be expected and projected deaths by the end of the year. We must raise the standard and the call. We've lost more wealth, more jobs, more homes, more access to capital, more investments, more savings, more benefits, more health care. We've had more losses in civil rights, and because of COVID-19, we've lost more lives. But we've not lost our drive to get out to vote. We've not lost our drive for public policy. We've not lost our drive for legislation. Perhaps his greatest accomplishment will not be that of being better than Abraham Lincoln, but driving Americans, particularly black and brown Americans, to the polls in record numbers. Change is in the air, and we are keeping hope alive.
Donald Trump and Joe Biden battled it out in a second and final presidential debate on Thursday night. It was a far more watchable civil conversation than their first meeting. President Trump was more restrained and came with a mission to deliver a couple of key messages. He tried to emphasize the economy and tried to play up the fact that Biden is a career politician. The two men were actually able to discuss policy in a format that was digestible and comprehensible for viewers. Those policy debates included conversations over immigration, racial justice, healthcare, North Korea, and of course, the coronavirus. The pandemic and the president's response to it has been a key argument for the Biden campaign, and that's how the Democratic presidential nominee began the night.
220,000 Americans dead. If you hear nothing else I say tonight, hear this. Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially, anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America.
President Trump tried to emphasize that a vaccine would be ready soon, and as he has been doing for months, he insisted the cure for the pandemic should not be worse than the problem itself.
I say we're learning to live with it. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does. He has the ability to lock himself up. I don't know. He's obviously made a lot of money someplace. But he has this thing about living in a basement. People can't do that. By the way, I, as the president, couldn't do that. I'd love to put myself in the basement or in a beautiful room in the White House and go away for a year and a half until it disappears. I can't do that.
Biden seized on that language, insisting the country was not learning to live with the virus. He said people were learning to die with it. And although Biden is the challenger in this race, he has a long political record to defend, and that was something that Donald Trump tried to highlight. He criticized Biden for the 1994 crime bill and the Obama administration's record on deportations. Biden has long run on the legacy of Barack Obama, but on immigration, as on healthcare, he tried to draw some distinctions. Still, this debate did not seem to have the tone or the substance to dramatically alter the trajectory of the race. Already, an estimated 49 million people have voted early.
There was an odd phenomenon in the debate. There was an attempt to fill a vacuum with nothing. What we saw was an absence of policy substance and an avoidance of the true issues that are plaguing the country even right now. What we've heard is there's no plan for the nation, particularly those who find themselves at the bottom and continually under assault by the mechanisms of government. And there's no more profound example of that than what we're seeing in terms of incidences of police violence across the country. In Louisville, Kentucky, we're dealing with the aftermath of Breonna Taylor's death and this argument about whether or not a bad search warrant that leads to a bad execution somehow becomes the problem of the victim and not an issue of the system. And so the president had no answers for that. The president had no answers for how do you deal with the dismantling of systemic racism. Why? Because the president doesn't believe that systemic racism exists. And even in the midst of all of that, what we see is on yesterday, the Judiciary Committee of the Senate moved to a floor vote the nomination of Judge Amy Coney Barrett, who will not take a position on super precedents, but holds to this archaic doctrine of originalism that was actually only created in the 1980s. And how that all comes together in this season where millions of people are across the country standing up for their right to the franchise, is you have a court that has been hostile to voter expansion and an agent of voter suppression when the issues at play are actually the issues that affect everyday people. Here are some of the issues that we get from the Breonna Taylor case. What happens when the prosecutor, who's designated the special prosecutor, gives incomplete evidence that does not lead to a full weighing of all of the factors by a grand jury? Basically, it nullifies the meaning and the power of the grand jury, and it leads to the manipulation of citizens who need to have some say on those who protect their interest and their rights. We recognize from last night, if we don't come away with anything else, that elections do have consequences. And we are living under the consequences of an election 4 years ago, and with an effort to try to reenact this same play for 4 more years. We cannot go through 4 more days, much less 4 more years, of the hostility of a federal government that acts against the interests of the people and reinforces hostility toward Black and brown communities. If you can endorse the Proud Boys and protect bad policing, then obviously that's a sign that there's something at play, and it requires the intervention of the people themselves. And so here's what I think Reverend Jackson would have us to remember, is that the voices of the people are the voices that matter. And what we saw last night is that there's one of the 2 candidates that spoke to the issues that are affecting the people down to their actual lives. And there's another voice that has been silent, just assuming that the problems that affect the people will just magically go away. This is an important election. And as we continue to talk about the issues, we want to highlight the areas where we recognize this president has had no plan, and what plans he has put in place have been actually hostile to the people.
The commentators started the discussion by introducing to the audience, the listening audience, and the presidential candidates that on this evening, and I quote, "On this evening, we are here to address 6 major topics." And I made the fundamental assumption that one of those topics would actually be education. And it was not. We find that problematic in nature. America is experiencing a low literacy crisis. Research tells us that if a child is not reading at or above 3rd grade, by the time he or she reaches that grade level, they are highly likely to struggle throughout their entire academic career. And yet the 6 major topics that were scheduled to be addressed during the presidential debate last night neglected to address this issue. In addition to that, when young children matriculate through school systems and their low literacy levels are at a high, right? The next thing that happens is that they become adults with low literacy. And adults with low literacy skills and abilities have a hard time getting a job when they are available. Adults with low literacy skills, if they do get a job, have a hard time maintaining it. Illiteracy at the adult level increases the likelihood that the adult will be incarcerated and experience health-related issues. It is problematic in nature. And so there remains a need for an education agenda to actually be established and articulated. In addition to that, during this period of COVID-19, the inequities that exist in America's schools became more apparent than ever. There remains a need for an agenda at the national level to exist, to do more than just say we want to address the inequities that exist in our schools, but the development of a comprehensive plan of action that is then backed by the development and implementation of policies designed for the very specific purpose of addressing low literacy in America. And lastly, the most important appointment that can be made after the president is selected and elected is that of Secretary of Education for the United States of America. He or she must be grounded in social justice theory and from a practical perspective, and he or she must be able to propose policies that move us closer to addressing the social justice issues that impact our students so that they are equipped with the skills, the intellect, and the capabilities to positively address the impacts of negative things that are occurring within their communities.
As you can hear from all of the speakers, there is an urgency in this moment this is not merely a who election, it's a what election. There are a number of things that have been left off of the agenda of the United States government for almost 4 years now. Education, civil and human rights, labor issues, an international agenda that is comprehensive and not isolationist. And in this moment, we've got to decide, will our agenda issues be first and foremost in our minds sufficiently to go to the polls in large numbers? We know that there's an absolute onslaught from state Republican parties against the efforts to expand access to the franchise, but it means between now and November 3rd, everybody, regardless of where you live, needs to be a part of this process of determining what will be on the agenda for the next 4 years. Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson has been intentional about making sure that any agenda is comprehensive and holistic, and it speaks to the issues that go from the bottom up and not simply from the top down. That is our priority, and Dr. King talked about the fierce urgency of now. Now is every day between today and November 3rd, ready to handle the business of what comes next in America and for the world.
Dr. Kim, I went to jail with a group of 7 students, July 17, 1960, almost 60 years ago. We never stopped moving. I lost a few of jail cells and death. We never stopped moving. I thought it was time to write some of it down so the older generation can learn how we did, and what we did, and how global it was. Whether speaking about Mandela in South Africa, India, Qatar, about Gandhi in India, here at home. This book tells the story, so please get it and give it to your friends. Read it, let's argue about it, let's discuss it.
Yep, so the book is Keeping Hope Alive, Sermons and Speeches of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. It's quite a good collection. You know, we've got sermons and speeches from around the globe because you have made such a global impact, not just here in the U.S., but around the world.
Thank you for tuning in to our International Saturday morning broadcast. We need your support. Here are ways to give to Rainbow Push Coalition. Text PUSH, P-U-S-H, to 41444 to support the work of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. and Rainbow Push Coalition. When you shop, Amazon gives. Visit Amazon Smile and select Push for Excellence as your charitable organization by starting your shopping at smile.amazon.com.
Get involved with the movement.
Somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
Join the movement.
If you're not a member, become a member.
I am somebody.
Fighting the most important battles for freedom and justice for all.
You made us change. Oh, trying to bring closer.
Join Rainbow Push.
But you're not pushing me away.
Join